Morning tiptoed into Willowmere village. Dew glittered on the grass, and the air smelled clean and cool. In the old well, the water made a small silver ripple. It twirled in a slow circle, as if the well was softly humming. Luna walked over with her lantern held carefully. She leaned close and watched the ripples dance. A little silver bead of light slid into Luna's lantern, like a sleepy firefly. The lantern felt warm in her hands. Kai came running down the path with his tiny fox friend. Their footsteps tapped softly on the stones. The fox sniffed and made a pleased little wiggle. The air smelled like mint and warm rain. Luna showed Kai the lantern's new glow. On the ground, a faint shiny trail began to appear, leading away from the well. The trail twinkled along the lane like tiny stars that forgot to go to bed. It seemed to be inviting someone to follow. Together they set off, step by quiet step. The lantern's silver bead bobbed gently, lighting the way. The village sounds grew soft behind them. Their shoes brushed the wet grass, and the trail kept sparkling ahead. Soon they reached Coppershade Orchard. Sunlight poured between the trees, and the air smelled sweet like apples. They walked into the orchard where leaves whispered above them. The lantern's silver glow made the trail easy to see. Luna paused to touch a cool apple on the ground. Dew made it shiny and smooth, like a marble. Kai held a bendy branch out of the way. The fox sniffed the apples and sneezed a tiny sneeze. At the edge of the orchard, a little sign pointed toward a brook. The shiny trail curled in the same direction, as if it knew the map. They left the orchard with light steps. A few copper leaves floated down like slow, quiet confetti. The path grew narrower and softer under their feet. Ahead, they could hear water making a friendly, giggling sound. Thimblefern Brook shone in the bright day. The water sparkled and sang as it slipped over smooth stones. They stepped closer and felt cool mist on their cheeks. The lantern's silver bead glimmered brighter, as if it liked the water. On one stone, a tiny teacup shape was carved. The shimmering trail paused there, waiting like a polite guest. Luna stepped onto the special stone with care. A small splash sprinkled her ankles, cool and tickly. Kai rinsed his hands in the clear brook. The fox stared at the wiggly reflection and flicked its tail. Together they crossed and reached the far bank. The trail led toward a darker place where big rocks made cool shadows. They waved goodbye to the singing water without a word. The brook's sparkle stayed behind as they walked into shade. The path squeezed between boulders, and the air felt cooler. Ferns brushed their knees like soft feathers. Mosswhorl Hollow was quiet and green. In the rock, a teacup-shaped stone door waited, damp with tiny drops. They stepped closer to the strange door. When Luna lifted her lantern, the silver bead painted the carving with moon-like light. The light gathered at a little notch under the teacup. The stone seemed to shiver, like it was waking from a nap. Kai placed his hand on the notch, and Luna held the lantern steady. With a soft scrape, the door opened just a little. A thin curl of steam drifted out, smelling like warm tea leaves. The air inside was quiet and a bit mysterious. The lantern's silver bead flickered like a sleepy eye blinking open. Luna held it close, gentle and brave. Kai looked back to make sure the way was safe. The fox peeked out too, ears tall and ready. They slipped inside and found steps that climbed gently upward. The lantern made round pools of light on the cool stone. Up they went until warm air touched their faces again. Behind them, the stone door settled shut with a quiet thump. A breezy path carried them onward. The trail sparkled again, and the sun began to lean toward the afternoon. Saffron Sky Meadow spread out like a soft blanket. The grasses swayed, and the light turned warm and honey-colored. They walked through the tall grass and listened to it whisper. Flowers brushed their knees, soft as tiny paintbrushes. In the meadow sat a stone bull, but it was dry and dusty. The shiny trail ended right there, as if it was worried. Luna held her lantern over the empty bowl. The silver bead made a small circle of light, but no water appeared. Kai searched the meadow for clues. The fox sniffed the earth, finding a faint smell of warm tea in the wind. Kai pointed to a rocky hill where a thin glow peeked out from a crack. Luna lifted the lantern, and the silver bead pulsed as if saying, "That way." They left the dry bowl behind and headed for the glow. The meadow waved goodbye with its swaying grass. The rocky path crunched softly as they climbed. The air grew cooler, and the lantern looked brighter against the stone. At last they found the Moontea Spring Grotto. Steam curled out like gentle breath, and pale stones glowed inside. They stepped into the steamy cave and felt warm drops on their skin. The air smelled like sweet tea and clean stone. The spring looked sleepy and low, as if it had forgotten how to bubble. The stones around it were pale, but their shine was dim. Luna held the lantern close to the water. The stone under her fingers felt colder than it should, like it missed the spring's warmth. Kai found a little crack where water might flow in. The fox pointed its nose at a clump of dry leaves stuck there, like a stubborn plug. They worked side by side. Luna shone the lantern into the crack, and Kai picked up a flat stone to help pry the blockage loose. With a tiny puff of dust, the leaves finally moved. A thin trickle of water slid through, shining like a silver string. They watched quietly as the trickle became a small stream. The cave sounded happier, with soft drips and gentle bubbling. The spring woke up little by little. Steam rose in warm swirls, and the pale stones began to glow again. The water grew smooth and shiny like glass. One brave star appeared in the reflection, twinkling in the ripples. Luna's hair shimmered with tiny drops of steam. She held the lantern close, feeling its steady warmth. Kai sat on a warm rock and listened to the bubbles pop softly. The fox curled its tail around its paws, cozy and calm. They dipped a leaf cup into the spring and watched it fill. The warm mist smelled sweet, like bedtime tea. The silver bead floated up from the lantern, slow and gentle. It drifted toward the spring as if it was going home. When the bead touched the water, rings of light spread out in quiet circles. The grotto glowed brighter, warm, and safe. More stars appeared in the pool's reflection, one after another. Luna and Kai stood still, letting the calm shine soak in. At last they turned to leave the spring to its quiet work. The lantern glowed softly, like a warm cookie fresh from the oven. They walked down the rocks as evening settled in. Tiny lights began to blink in the grass, like little night helpers. The meadow looked different at sunset, softer and darker. Far away, the stone bowl gave a small, happy glow. They crossed the meadow again, slower now. The wind felt cooler, and the lantern's light felt cozy. The stone bowl was not dry anymore. It held clear water that reflected the evening stars like sparkling sprinkles. Luna touched the rim and felt cool drops, smooth and fresh. The bowl seemed content, like it could finally rest. Kai looked up as the sky turned deeper blue. The fox gave a wide yawn, and Kai laughed quietly. They began the journey home under a sky full of tiny lights. Their steps were gentle, like they didn't want to wake the night. The lantern guided them along the dark path. The air still carried a soft tea smell, warm and comforting. Thimblefern Brook glimmered under moonlight. The water looked like it was holding tiny pieces of the sky. They crossed the stones again, listening to the quiet splashes. Moonlight and lantern light danced together on the water. On the far side, they followed the familiar path. Night sounds hummed softly, like a lullaby made of crickets. The orchard felt like a dark, gentle tunnel. The lantern painted warm circles on the grass as they walked toward the village lights. Willowmere Village welcomed them back with glowing windows. The well sat quietly, calm now, under the watching stars. They stopped at the well for one last look. The water was smooth, and a tiny star winked in its reflection. Luna carried her lantern